Hi guys, Rita here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On today's video, I will not be reviewing any book. However, I'll be answering a couple of questions from you guys. I feel like I didn't properly introduce myself when I started this channel, so I'll be answering a few questions from people who wanted to know more about me, more about reading, and more about how I got into reviewing African literature. So question number one, what made you get into book reviewing and African literature? So the story is quite a bit long, to be honest. Well, first of all, I did English literature in high school. It was my favorite subject, and I really didn't understand the importance of it. I just enjoyed like proving a point, more to say, because with literature you see different things from other people, but you really have to support what you're saying and to actually point it out with what's in the story. So for me, I enjoyed African literature because I could come up with my own story, and then I would use what the author had written to like justify it. And what got me into reviewing books was I felt like most people, or rather most Africans, they kind of think, or they've been told that they don't like reading or reading is not for them. But I don't think so. I think it was a lack of representation, because I think we've had a lot of Danielle Steele, a lot of J.K. Rowling, a lot of Ian Rankin, all of those authors. And I feel like as African people, we didn't really have a lot of representation until like recently. Well, for myself, recently, that's when I started discovering African authors, and I was thinking, so many people, so many Africans would be happy to know more about people like them, people who look like them. Because, for example, like, of course, Danielle Steele, she's an amazing author, but how is someone like me going to relate to like having blue eyes or having like blonde hair which blows when the air blows? I have 4C hair, so definitely it was something that, okay, I would say, oh, okay, I understand, but I cannot relate. So I just felt like, as African people, we need someone to represent us, and it's nice to read something which you can relate to. So that's what got me into book reviewing. And to be honest, I've had this idea for like over a year. I just felt like, God was nudging me to like, just do it. But I'm quite camera shy, believe it or not. I rarely take pictures of myself, and I was just thinking, oh, maybe I'm not good enough for this. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe there's a certain type of people who are supposed to do this. But I just ended up thinking, you know what? Let me just do it. Let me just talk about what I think. Let me talk about what I know. And then that's how I started reviewing African literature. Question number 2. On average, how many books do you read per month? So I would say now I don't really count how many books I read per month. I could read like 2 books per month, because I remember like ages ago, like when I started getting into African literature, that was 2017, 18, around that time. I used to like read like 10 books per month, but then I felt like I was just reading to prove a point. I wasn't really reading to really understand the book. It was more of like trying to hit a target of like, oh, I've read so many books in a year, in a month. So since then, I'm really taking my time to really understand the book, to notice all the topics in the book, because I feel like almost every book, or rather every book, African literature book, kind of has like a few topics which stand out. So on average, I would say maximum of 3 books. That's what I can do. I used to like have a day book and a night book. I do that sometimes, like a book which I read during the day and a book which I read during the night, trying to just like balance. But as of late, I've been really occupied, so I can only manage to read 1 book. And at the moment, I'm reading I Do Not Come to You by Chance, and I'm loving it. I think by far it's the best comedic book, if that makes sense, I've read in a while. I'm really enjoying it, and I started reading it on Monday, so I've read it for like, I've been reading it for 5 days, and that's quite huge considering like I have to balance work and everything else in between. So yeah, on an average, I think I would say now I read like 2 books per month. Question number 3, How many books have you reviewed? So since I started the channel, that was about 2 months ago, I've reviewed 10 books so far, and I'm yet to review more because I don't read these books like as soon as I finish, then I review. Most of them I read them like a year or 2 years ago. So so far I've done 10 reviews, but there are more videos to come of books that I've read before, books that I'm currently reading, so sometimes they kind of like, lapse. But yeah, so far I've done 10 videos. Next question, what inspires you to write? So for some who don't know, I'm actually a writer. I write mostly short stories, and I'm working on a couple of books, which I am struggling with, to be honest. Writing is not easy. It is hard, but anyway, I know I'll be able to finish. But what inspires me to write? That's a very important question. It's a very loaded question. But I think what inspires me to write the most is what goes on around me, like things that affect me. It could be in a positive way, it could be in a negative way. And one thing that I always cling on to, or a quote that I always like read to encourage me, is a quote by Toni Morrison, where she says, write the book which you want to read, something along those lines. I'm probably butchering it, but if you're familiar with it, you know what I'm talking about. And that has really encouraged me to write anything that I want, and I write for myself most of the times, and then I just release it to the world for you guys to get to read it, get to like it, dislike it. But what inspires me to write is, I think, what goes on a day-to-day basis, the injustices of the world. It could be something romantic, because I don't really have a niche. I don't believe in having niches, because I don't like to contain myself. I don't like to corner myself to say, okay, Rudo, you're only supposed to write about this, you're only supposed to write about that. So I kind of I'm all over the place. Just depends with what comes to me. And usually when I feel the urge to write, it just, how do I describe the feeling? That feeling when you get get butterflies when you fall in love with someone and everything is all pretty, you're just excited, you get sweaty palms. That's the kind of feeling I get when I have an exciting story to write about. It's quite weird, but it's the exact same feeling I have. And it kind of reminds me, there's this African American poet, if I'm not mistaken, I think her name is Ruth Bell. I hope I'm correct. But she was saying the way she ended up writing poems, she would see the poem flying away, and then she would run after it, and then when she caught it, she would write it backwards. So I think people are inspired in different ways. For me, that was quite outstanding, because authors or creatives, they get inspired in different ways. But for me, it's that feeling. It could be an idea, it could be something very minute. I remember the story, there's a particular story which I wrote, which was just from a very silly, something very silly that really conjured me to kind of oh, okay, I could write that. And from there, it could be a sentence, it could be the way someone looks at something, it could be even an itch, it's something, so many different things can really inspire you to write. But yeah, day-to-day basis things, or something different. I can't really pinpoint what inspires me, but yeah. The next question reads, who is your favorite author? My favorite author, well, I would say my favorite author of all times would be Toni Morrison, only because, well, Toni Morrison, to be honest with you, she was a phenomenal woman. And I think most African authors, women or men, they really got, she really inspired a lot of us. Myself being African, having to see an African American, I know obviously there's a disconnect, her being African American, her being in America, but for me it was seeing someone who's black doing amazing things. It really inspired me to start my own. And then having to see Chimamanda, then having to see Novio Chuma, it was very inspiring. But I would say my favorite author of all times would have to be Toni Morrison. She's in the top 3, her being number 1. And I would say Gessi, who wrote Homegoing. I do not find any fault with that book. That is my favorite book for the year. Another favorite would be I like Novio. She's a Zimbabwean author. I really like House of Stones. I like Shadows, and I have a couple of more. I like what's his name again? Dambuzo Marechera. Look at me, silly me. Yeah, I really liked him. I think Dambuzo was really misunderstood because I think, like me, obviously, like he had like his own things going on, but I feel like he was misunderstood in the sense that he was like intelligent, but he couldn't fit in anymore. He couldn't fit in the new Zimbabwe, and he couldn't fit in into the USA. Into the UK, sorry, not the USA, to the UK. So I think like I can relate to him in the sense that the Zimbabwe which I knew, or which I still know, is like from 2014 when I left home, and that's when combis and transport was like 5 rand. And obviously, like looking back at it now, it will never go back to that. It will never be the same Zimbabwe again. So even if I'm to like go back to visit or do anything, I'll kind of feel like out of place because the Zimbabwe I knew before is no longer there. And here, it's also hard for me to fit in because like I came here when I was a bit older, and I still have memories of, you know, back home. I still have like ties with my friends, with my family, you know, with certain things, with my language. So I think that from what I understand, I think that's what Numbers was going through. And for him also, because he was like super intelligent, it kind of took a toll on him, and he had to like express himself, obviously, like in a way which wasn't good. But he's one of my favorites. I really think he was misunderstood, and I would have loved to be in a room where there was Dambuzo Marechera and James Baldwin. My gosh, I just love how they explain things to do with race, to do with injustice. And yeah, James Baldwin would have to be one of my favorite. I haven't really read a lot of his work, but I've watched some of it, and his quotes, like, I think, wow, yeah. Next question. Oh gosh, I should not have opened this platform to my family and friends. I heard you have the coolest brother in the world. How far true is it? Obviously, this is from my brother. Yes, I have the coolest brother. And ladies, he cooks and he cleans, you know, so you don't have to bring him back here for us to teach him manners. And he's pretty good looking, I must say. Yeah, so I do have a cool brother. How do you balance your reading schedule with work and social life? So how I balance my reading schedule is when I'm working, which is like 90% of the week, I read on my breaks. Sometimes if I'm like super interested in a book, I'll read it like when I'm going to work in the morning, on my breaks, when I'm coming back from work, before I go to sleep. That's when I get to read a book. And on my days off, I make sure like I read, like if it's a very interesting book and I can't keep it, you know, out of my hands, I will read it like on my off days. So sometimes if I do not answer your texts or your calls, it could be because of that. It's nothing personal, but I kind of get like fully engrossed in books, so I'm sorry. But how I balance it with my social life, I think my social life is pretty dead, to be honest. I feel like I'm one of those boring people, you know, because I'm just a homebody. I like being at home. I like being warm. I like, you know, intimate things. I'm not like out there. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just not my scene. I remember for my 21st birthday, a friend of mine took me out to go to a club, and I looked for somewhere to sleep. So that's when I was like, you know what, I don't think this is for me. So I really enjoy being at home, reading a book. And my social life, I have friends which I meet, you know, not very often, obviously now because of the COVID, but I try to like make time. I text them all the time and we talk, you know, frequently. So I think with this whole lockdown thing, that's the most I can get. And I've also joined Slowly, which is like this app where you write letters from people around the world. So I think I'm doing well with expanding my social life. So what got you into reading African literature? Well, what got me into reading African literature was I felt lost and out of place. I think I was going through a period where I was like trying to, find my identity, because when I moved here, I felt so out of place. I still have my moments when I'm just like, do I really belong here? I really struggled, and I'm still struggling to like fully understand that I'm here now. So I think what got me into reading African literature was I wanted like a connection, with back home, and the funny thing is, when I was doing this whole soul searching, being myself, I really didn't start with African literature. I started with African American literature, because I think the first book which I read, or which I really got into by a black person, was The Bluest Eyes by Toni Morrison, obviously. And if you've read The Bluest Eyes, I'm sure you'd understand the emotion, the roller coaster which you go through. I think by far that is the only book which I managed to throw across the room. That book is so intense, and I could see myself in that little girl, like having to struggling to identify, trying to be someone, because like she wanted blue eyes, because blue eyes were perceived to be more beautiful than brown or black or any other kind of eye color. And she got to a point where she would pray to God, where she would do all the things to try to get the blue eyes. And also like what she went through with her father, it was just, I understand why it was banned, it was like it was banned before, but it was an emotional roller coaster. I remember I threw the book across the room. I was like, no, I cannot do this anymore. But I ended up finishing it. That's the thing with Toni Morrison, she's amazing. She was amazing. She was one of the people I really wanted to meet before she died. Sadly, she died last year. And I was gutted, because, I really wanted to say, what, I know, obviously, she knows a billion people, but she really changed my life, in the sense that when it comes to writing, obviously, she literally just said, write what you want, the world will catch on, write whatever you want, whatever you feel like you need to write, even if it's in your language, who cares, just go for it. So I think that's what got me into reading. And then I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, my favorite autobiography. I just like, oh my gosh, I think I had like a mini crush on him for a while, because his candor, he was very honest, and he would literally tell you the truth, like this and this. Obviously there are a lot of differences, but I really enjoyed his autobiography. And then, because I couldn't really relate with things, in in America, the kind of racism or what they go through is different from from what I go through, because I'm from Zimbabwe. I can't say, of course there's racism in Zimbabwe, but it's not like where I lived, I experienced it. Because when I came here, that's when I realized that, I'm actually a black person, because back home we're the majority, of black people. And where I lived, I would rarely see white people, because they kind of have their own, section where they live. But when I came here, that's when I was like, dang, I now understand, what it's like to be treated as a second-class citizen. So because I couldn't fully relate to what exactly they were going through, I didn't want to take that plight on myself, because I didn't want to masquerade myself and be like, this is what I'm going through. I didn't want that. So I ended up moving towards African literature. That's when I was like, okay, now I found my people, So I think the first book I read, like most people, was probably Americana. And I think after I read Americana, I bought 4 other copies, which I gave to my family and friends, because I think Chimamanda is amazing. Besides this whole thing of, people not liking her because she's a feminist, I think she's an exquisite writer. The way she writes, the way she arranges words together, you can literally feel the emotion. And I've seen that with most female authors, African authors, they know how to evoke emotions. With men, most books which I've read by African literature by men, This is nothing to do with feminism, by the way. This is just something which is like, this is common sense. But I feel like most men, they kind of like fail to connect to the emotion. I think it's more technical in the sense that it's kind of like matter of factly, like this is what happened because of this. But with women, I kind of feel like they take their time to really describe. Sometimes they don't even use a lot of words, but what they do is they don't tell you, they show you. But with men, they tell you what they want you to see. I hope that kind of makes sense, because when you're writing something and you like showing something, I think it's more powerful than when you tell something what you want them to see. So from Chimamanda, I read all of her books, and then I moved on to like other authors, and my goal now is for me to read like a book from every African country, because I think with Africa, the thing is, as much as we're from different countries, you know, Africa is a continent, by the way, for those who don't know, 54 individual countries, by the way. I feel like there's a connection there. I can't really pinpoint exactly what it is, but there's kind of a connection where you can relate. Because for example, I'm Zimbabwean, but like when a Nigerian author is talking about NEPA, like how like that's like the which has to do with electricity, when they say like NEPA took the light, I'm like, oh, Sesa, you know. So I kind of relate to that. Unlike when a Western author is talking about snow, or is talking about something which you wouldn't really see on a day-to-day basis, it's quite hard to relate, and you know, you can only stretch your imagination as far. So with African authors, I kind of feel like, of course, like I won't fully understand, but there's also that sense of like, okay, this is quite familiar. So that's what really got me into African literature, and I'm not going back, to be honest. I think this is it for me. I'm going to be reading, like I've dedicated the last 2 years to only reading African literature, and I've been reading it, and I've been enjoying it, I've been loving it, I've been learning, and most of the stories which I've written, they've also been inspired by a lot of African authors. So yeah, that's how I got into reading African literature. It was me trying to find my identity, and I wouldn't say that I fully found it, you know, because obviously it doesn't only have to do with me looking for it in African literature. As a Christian also, I have to find it in Christ, and that's a day-to-day thing which I have to go through. The next question reads, what's the first book you would recommend for someone who's never read African literature before? So I think from the books which I've reviewed already, I would recommend My Sister the Serial Killer, only because it's quite small. You know, it's not like your typical big book where you have to like think like, oh, when am I going to read over all of these pages? And I think most people are intimidated by big books, and I can understand, because if you're someone who's literally starting to get into reading, I would encourage you to start with something light. Read something you like, because I feel like most people think they're not, you know, African enough if they haven't written the greats like Chinua Achebe or Chimamanda, you know, all the great people like Tsitsi Dangarembga, all of them. And I think, you know, just take it easy. Start with something light. You know, My Sister the Serial Killer is good. Start with something you would like. You know, you don't necessarily have to jump into the big books, you know, the academics or the books which people rave about, because it could be different with you. But with the thing with My Sister the Serial Killer is, it's quite, yeah, like what I said before, it's quite small, because like one chapter, it could be 2 pages, it could be 1 page even, and it has suspense in it, so you keep wanting to read more about it. It is satire, it has like, it's fully packed. So from the books which I've reviewed, I would highly recommend My Sister the Serial Killer. I think it's a good start for someone who hasn't read African literature before. Next question. Do you get writer's block, and how do you overcome it? So I'm currently going through that, you know, that stage where I can't, like my brain is literally shut down. I think this year I only managed to write 2 stories, and I'm struggling to finish it because it's a series called Pamshana, and I'm struggling to write the 3rd part. I think, you know, this whole lockdown thing has really taken a toll. You'd think like, oh, now, like, well, for me it really hasn't changed, because like as a key worker I still have to go to work, but you'd think that, oh, now I have all this time, you know, I can be more productive. But I've been finding it very hard to be more productive. Like, I'm really stressed out. I can't even think, because I think with creativity you need to be like out there, you know, your mind need to explore new places. But when you're just crammed in one place, the inspiration kind of goes, and it's quite hard to like find your footing. So I've been really struggling with writer's block over the last few months, and I was supposed to have written a book by now, but my mind, it just can't. I'm trying to be positive and tell myself that I can, but at the same time I just feel like this heaviness. My brain is so heavy right now. But yeah, how I used to get over writer's block, because now I'm trying to like find other ways to get, you know, motivated, to see how I can write. But how I used to do that, I would go to this cafe. There's the Waterstone Cafe. It's a bookstore, but it's also a cafe. It's my favorite place, and that's where I would go, and then I would just sit there. Like on my day off, I would sit there and then I would write. Like, it would just come. I don't know, it could be because, you know, I'm around other people. Well, you don't really talk to them, but I just feel like maybe because, you know, the setting was different, so I was around other people who were also like, you know, busy doing their thing, and it kind of like inspired me to like, you know, write. But as of late I've been really struggling with it. I've been struggling to get out of this, you know, mundane place, and I hope I do, really, because I have like over 30 things in my draft and I can't find the strength to write. Even like on my blog now, it's dead. Like, I haven't been able to write anything, and I hope to take some time off to like, you know, try and write something. But at the same time, I'm a very big advocate, like when it comes to mental health. Like, my mental health is very important to me, so when I feel like a lot is going on, I kind of like withdraw myself. It's something that I've been practicing, because if it were like a few months ago, I'd be like, I need to do this, you know, then I would burn myself out. But now I'm just, you know, trying to like take care of myself more, take care of my mental health, seeing how much I can take on, how much I can't. But I really hope I get out of this, because it doesn't feel like me. I feel like I'm myself when I'm writing, you know. I know like that's not very good, because I also need to be okay with myself resting. But I think my brain is always being I'm constantly on survival mode, and I think that's quite dangerous, because when you crash and burn, it really takes a toll. So yeah, I really hope I know how to get out of this one, because with the second lockdown looming, I can already feel I can really feel the pressure now. Like, how am I going to handle this one? So yeah, I really hope, if anyone has other ways to like, you know, help with getting out, like, you know, being inspired with the lockdown, not inspired by the lockdown. I don't want to write anything to do with COVID or zombies, with, you know, the virus. I told myself I'm not going to write anything to do with it, because I think we've had enough of it already. You know, the news, everyone is talking about it, you know, it seems like it's going to be here forever. So, you know, if there are ways which have been managed to like get over writer's block, please, by all means, do share, because this girl needs to read and write. Mostly, I really need to. So I promised to like read out all the questions. My crazy friend had to ask like the most ridiculous question. Are you the head girl from that Zimbabwean school? Yes, I am, Dexter. Are you dating anyone? Well, a couple of weeks ago, someone on Twitter commented that I do not have the time to be dating because I'm dating books. So if that's the case, I'm definitely dating. Oh, so someone asked, did I win the giveaway? Fortunately, the giveaway was won by Anastasia from Indonesia, and I think I announced it on the two platforms, as Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, Anastasia from Indonesia is the one who won the giveaway. So the last but not least question: what words of advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue writing? Just write, just start, just go for it. Because I think the hardest part is the writing part. Honestly, writing is not easy. I've been struggling, but if it's your story, write it the way you want. Write it, in whichever way that pleases you. And I know there's this notion of you always feel like you need to have these accomplishments, you need to have this degree to be a writer, you need to have this and that. But to be honest with you, I've written about 16 different short stories, and I've not started for writing. Well, I've taken courses, but even before that, I used to write before I even took any of those courses. So just go for it. You don't need to have a degree in English literature or in writing for you to write. And I know I'm giving you this advice, but I really need to take it for myself too, is to enter into competitions. There are so many different competitions out there, and even if you get rejected, just look at it as a way of redirection. Just try and improve more. And you can also start a blog, publish your stuff on your blog. You can also self-publish. You don't have to wait for publishing houses to approach you. I think that's the beauty of being a writer now. You can literally self-publish yourself. You don't have to wait for for the big companies to be like, oh, okay, we like your stuff. You can just go for it. Do it on your own, which is something I'm also looking into. And also read. If you want to be a good writer, you need to read. Be an avid reader, because you can't be a writer if you don't read. To be honest with you, it's science. You can't be a writer if you're not a reader. You need to read. Read the things you like, read the things you don't like. Kind of see the kind of different styles you like. I remember, I'm not sure if it must be Toni Morrison, man. Toni Morrison or Shonda Rhimes. It's Toni Morrison, I'm sure it's Toni Morrison. She was saying, if there's a book you like I said before, but this one she was saying, if there's an author who you like and you really love their book, handwrite it, write it with your hand, the whole book if you can. Obviously these days most people will probably just type it, but just kind of get a feel of the vibe, of the genre, of the emotions that go through the book, and then you write your own book. But don't copy word for word, when you write your book, that is, don't copy word for word what the author says. And also that there's nothing new under the sun. I've heard of people saying, oh, this person's story is quite similar. Of course there's plagiarism, but at the same time there's nothing new under the sun. There could be stories which are the same, but they could be different because of certain things. But just write, man. But don't steal other people's work. That is wrong. Just write, just start, just go for it. And also I would say, so I've said you should just go for it. You should also read, and just kind of see what kind of genre you like, and just also have in mind that not everyone's going to like your work, even your friends and your family. For me, I've stopped expecting the most from my friends and family. I kind of had to divorce myself from that, because I would get really depressed if they didn't like my things or share my things. So I was just you know what, it is what it is. They probably not, that's not the kind of thing that they like, and you can't hold that against them. Just kind of remove yourself from that. You save from yourself from a heartbreak. But yeah, always expect rejection. Don't take it personally. I remember the first time I was rejected. Oh my gosh, I felt like I was never going to write again, and I think I went for months without writing, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, why? I was this was a good piece, how could you not like it? But people like different things, and there's so many writers out there, there's so many authors out there. Always know you're not the only one. There are a billion people who are writing, and you might think that you might be the best, but even someone who's not that great, if they are very consistent, they will be able to go far. So try and be consistent. I also need to take this advice from myself, honestly, because I'm not very consistent. I struggle with consistency. Also because like having to balance life, having to balance work, kind of feels like it's a lot. But since it's something that I really am passionate about and I love, I kind of like take time, like, you know, sometimes I set time apart, like, okay, this is going to be like, I'm going to write. And then sometimes when I just feel like it, I just grab my laptop and then I just start writing. But make sure you write every day. I've heard that, you know, you're supposed to write every day to perfect your craft, which for me doesn't really seem realistic. Well, that's just my opinion, because I have a very busy day. Like, my day is like, there's just a lot going on. And I know most people will be like, oh, you should not make any excuses. Guys, real life is not a joke. Like, there's a lot going on. So yeah, I'll probably take my own advice on this one, because I've been struggling, like I said before, you know, with this whole lockdown looming, also having to take care of her mental health, finding good things, you know, to look forward to. So yeah, if you're an upcoming writer, please, by all means, go for it. I'll read your stuff, definitely. And yeah, best of luck. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for your questions, and I'll be sure to do another Q&A maybe sometime next year, because, you know, I would have like more videos out, and I'm pretty sure by then there'll be more questions. So until next time, goodbye.